Some people have really cool stories, which always bums me out. But some people have really cool stories about like, oh yeah, we met like in Lost. We met in like I met Sawyer in the crash.
You're speaking of like the ABC television series Lost.
Yes, the best then worst show on television.
Almost no one has stories like that. How they met people.
Okay, obviously that's hyperbole. What I'm saying is that some people have cool stories, like I crashed into his car, but then we became best friends.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I because we have told the story of how we've met a million times, and every time we tell the story of how we met, I always just feel like I'm lame, because it's like, yeah, my closest friend and the person I now live with in a house, I met because I was selling a chair on Facebook.
It all comes down to a chair.
Yeah. This is before Marketplace, by the way. I think I really pioneered that.
Yeah. Facebook probably owes you money.
They
at
owe
this
me.
point.
Well, they owe me money for two reasons. Number one, the chair thing. I sold a chair on Facebook using their social media platform to make that sale. So Marketplace was my idea. Number two, I also invented Facebook. I'm the Winklevoss twins.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm
Jesse
both.
Eisenberg.
Yeah, I'm both of the Winklevoss twins, but I have merged into one large Winklevie. Winklevie would be the plural. It doesn't fucking matter.
I don't know.
For anybody who is interested, the way that we, who are doing this show because of our friendship and who have been friends for so long, the reason we know each other the way we do is because of being a participant in the same sort of nebulous of people, but then also mainly because I sold, or I didn't even sell it. I was giving
you gave it away. That was the nicest part.
Yeah.
I had an apartment with no furniture in it, and I needed anything to sit on, really. And I opened up Facebook, and your post just happened to be the first one that popped up at the top there.
Yeah. I had my, at the time still alive, grandmother's chair that when she had moved into a smaller condo, I had, my parents took that chair and then they replaced it. So I had one that was upstairs in I was a teenager. Yeah. Like I was right at the end of being a teenager, and I still had that chair. So I'm getting rid of it. You need furniture. We do that. And then it was like, by the way, like, you want to hang out at any point?
Yeah.
And
then, we have common interests and things.
Yeah. Then in that period of time after, I sat on that chair in your apartment to actually hang out many times.
Yeah.
My grandmother would then go on eventually to pass away, at which point I assume that she was near or around that chair.
What?
Like a haunting situation. But just to bring me comfort, to be around. But not you. She was haunting you.
I had that chair for years.
I know. And she was there the whole time. But thanks for tuning in to the Third Channel podcast, where the only subject today is horror. There are 3 channels, which means there are 2 hosts. I am number 1, PJ, and then also number 1 because we're equals.
And I'm Derek.
I felt weird saying, and number 2.
Right. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And number 2 is Derek. I'm going away from feeling bad about that. I'm starting to feel.
Oh.
Yeah. And the one thing that we have to discuss today, see what I'm doing? It's like a 3-2-1. 3 channels, 2 hosts, 1 thing to talk about today.
Oh, okay. It's now making sense. I didn't know where you were going with that, but you pulled it together somehow.
Well, by explaining it.
Yeah.
And everyone knows that the funniest jokes are the ones that you have to explain immediately after making them. We are we have been working towards what we're doing right this second for a long time.
Feels like a long time.
Yeah.
Feels like a very long time. It's the first time we've been on mic together in, I don't know, years.
Yeah.
Half a decade, probably.
Yeah, a little longer. More. The thing that we struggled with for so long is what to do to cement what is a hobby into something that we could enjoy working on.
Yeah. Because it's one thing to, you read things, like maybe you're a big reader or you watch movies all the time or you play video games, and like everybody has, an outlet at this point and something that they really enjoy doing. And I think something that we all kind of gain from or enjoy is listening to people talk about the things they're passionate about. Mm-hmm. So this is a good enough reason and a good enough way for us to do that, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, what horror movies represent obviously is different for everybody. I think that you and I come from and I think that's kind of what the show is about.
Oh, yeah.
Is we come to horror, specifically the films, from very different places.
Hugely different spots there. I'm a person who basically came out of the womb loving horror for whatever reason. Like from very, like, if I think back, I don't know if you do this, but I do. I like to think back of like things that I enjoy in life or experiences that I now have or feel, and why do I feel that way? Why do I like that thing? And so I look back and I can kind of almost pinpoint it. Hopefully I can find that thing of why do I like horror? And, I go back to, what I thought was probably the earliest was like, I loved Goosebump books growing up. Whenever you're in that era of elementary school and things like that. I don't know if you read those at all. Did you ever read Goosebumps?
I remember, so what's funny, I read a handful of them, like The Mask, the Spooky Mask, Scarecrow Walks at Midnight. But then my relationship with Goosebumps is the PC point-and-click Escape from Horrorland game.
Oh, okay.
Fucking loved that game.
Which is funny because that's like... It's just funny where we come from different places into this, even early on like that. Because whenever I trace it, because like I thought Goosebumps was probably my earliest, because that's like whenever I actually learned to read and things like that. I was reading on my own. Before that, even I can trace it back to what I think is probably the earliest is the Berenstain Bears books. I don't know if you read those as a kid or had them read to you, I guess.
My mom was a preschool and then early education teacher. So we had those books in our house pretty categorically, yeah.
Gotcha. We had a couple, like we didn't have a ton of them, but the one that I remember the most and the one that I enjoyed the most is, and my mom would read it to me all the time, and it was before I knew how to read. She had read it to me so many times that I just knew the words to it. And so I could just recite it as she was doing it. But it was called The Spooky Old Tree. And it's, I can see it in my mind's eye of like, the book cover is like this dark blue and it's just a big scary looking tree. The tree almost has a face to it. And the three children bears are going into it on like a ghost hunt sort of thing. And as they progress through the tree and all these different bats pop out or a spider drops down on them, and each of them gets more and more scared until they're eventually running out of the back of the tree and back into the arms of their parents. They're terrified. And so like even as like a baby almost, I was like digging the scary stuff, the horror stuff for whatever reason. And so when Jurassic Park comes out in 93, I am 3 years old.
Yeah.
I'm not old enough to go to a movie theater and see that. But I'm very excited about it whenever I see trailers or posters or anything about it, because I know what the Jurassic period is. And
it's a picture of a dinosaur.
And it's a picture of a T-Rex, so I'm very excited. And so whenever it came out on VHS, my parents rented it, and it was a big thing where we sat down as a family. We're going to sit down and watch this. And my mom, I remember, like, she tells the story all the time of, like, she sat me down and was like, okay, we're all going to be here, but if this gets too scary, you let us know and we will turn it off. Because, I mean, I don't know how long it took for a movie to go from theaters to VHS at that point, but so I'm no more than 3 years old.
Yeah. It had to have been a while long, because now we live in the age of like, all they have to do is somebody goes into the Disney basement and grabs a giant lever and clicks it down, and now it's on Disney Plus. It pulls it sucks it out of the movie screens and onto your screen at home.
Yeah, and it's the world I want to live in. But so we're watching it, and she has that little talk, that little sit down with me, and I'm just like, Mom, it's just people getting eaten by dinosaurs. And she was like, okay, well, I guess if you already know that's what it is, then you should be fine. And we sat and watched it as a family. And I don't know, it's just a very,
Then you did the Richard Ramirez thing, but instead of carving pentagrams into your hands, you carved the Jurassic Park symbol. And they were like, maybe that should have been way more of a red flag.
Probably. But who knows? And then, I don't know, it was every little thing that I could kind of get my hands on that was kind of scary, kind of horror. So Scooby-Doo's a good example of that. I think that's a good entry-level scary thing for kids. Especially like when we were growing up. Because I mean, it was old for us.
Yeah, it's old enough that Batman is in Scooby-Doo cartoons,
right?
But hasn't
Adam
been
West,
even hasn't been live action yet.
Right.
Is how old Scooby-Doo is.
But then we hit at this weird time where like it was constantly playing on Cartoon Network and then Boomerang.
Well, especially because there's like, when we're coming up, there's like 2 versions.
Right.
There's a newer version that's still having episodes added to like its later seasons, but then there's the original, like it and Looney Tunes are airing originally at the same time. So yeah,
and then you have on top of that, then we get this string of like 4 new movies that came out, like animated, the best and the first of which being Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island.
Yeah, which is funny because, and we will get here at some point. We will hear the title Scooby-Doo Zombie Island again because that movie, along with a series of other innocuous, minor, childish things, have fucked me up for life.
Which is interesting, but I that's the thing that I want to get into because I want to see is there a thread there, and I think we might find one. If we really think about it.
Yeah, we absolutely will. Because it's funny because you say Scooby-Doo Zombie Island and like the memories of that movie are my brother being like, I have a older brother who's 4 years older than me. And
he's like the same age as I am.
Yeah, and he's like, this is what I want to watch. And I'm like, please do not do this. Like, can we please just watch Muppets Treasure Island again? I please. I don't.
I beg of you.
I can't. I couldn't handle it. It would fuck me up so bad. But it's funny that there are those touchstones of like everybody who goes through this stuff who takes bad or good away from it.
Right. And like we watched the same movie, literally. We're talking about the same movie. And like I loved it and was like, yeah, this is just the next step in this chain of like getting to The Exorcist eventually. And you were like, I never want to see that again.
Which is funny because we will and that is the thesis of the show, and it will become crystal clear, I think, around Zombie Island.
Yeah.
Which is now I look at that movie and I'm like, that's a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah.
But as a child and even, younger, like, or older, like in 20s, it's like, if it's got that kind of material in it, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
But,
then I guess the next thing that I would really say is, so the Goosebump books, obviously, like once I had learned to read, it was that, and then not horror, but like the Animorphs books, I read those a ton. So it was always sci-fi and horror for me. And then,
I would say Animorphs is horror only in the concept
it's body
of
horror.
If you look at the cover of those books and you take the first picture where they're a guy and the second picture where they're a zebra and you look at the ones in the middle where it's a guy turning into a fucking zebra, that is Kubrick like
horrifying.
Or Cronenberg
yeah.
like The Fly. It is the most disturbing fucking shit ever. So I would say that it's kind of horror
in a way. Yeah, that's true. That's a good look it out. So like there was Goosebumps the books obviously, but then you had Goosebumps the show, and I didn't watch that one as much. I love the theme song to it.
Yes.
That da-na-na-na-na-na, like the piano score and that is great. But the one that I really loved was on Nickelodeon on Snick, which was their late night Saturday night Nick for a little older, called Are You Afraid of the Dark? Which was like a Canadian horror franchise for kids where they would tell each episode. It's like The Twilight Zone. It's an anthology. So every episode's different. And it's a group of kids around a campfire. And one of them tells a scary story, which then plays out. And I just remember watching that as a kid because the show started in like 94, 95, something. It ran for like 5 seasons originally. I think they've brought it back recently. I haven't watched it. But I remember as a kid being so impressed and so like I felt like, walking with my chest out because it was rated Y7, which is like a TV rating of like you have like Y or you have like kids like, and then you have like a little step up is Y7. It's good for youth who are 7 or above. And I was watching it at like 5, and I was just like, yeah, I'm allowed to watch a Y7 show. I just remember that.
Then at 8 years old, you felt really good with a cigarette in your hand.
That is true. And then I became addicted.
Oh my God.
But I assume that's not a show that you frequented.
What's funny is that my father has a really close friend of his, and he runs like a warehouse job, and we would go to that warehouse because my father and he were such good friends that like there would be work days where we would be picked up by my father because we all kind of went to school in the area that he worked. So he would pick us up, and then he would go there after work, and the two of them would hang out. and his friend had like a TV in that warehouse, and they would play that show. Just click it on. It just happened to be about the time that we were getting there. So I saw it like kind of. I'm not sitting there watching it, but it is playing. So you would see kind pieces of it.
Osmosis, you're getting it. Yeah, I don't know. That one was always big in my house, and then around the same time, what was funny is I hit this moment where in 95, I actually looked this up because it's been this thing that has like haunted me forever. Where I hit this thing where I saw part of a horror movie on TV, and I would have been like 5 years old at this point, and it scarred me, and I like put down horror for. I feel like it was probably like 6 months to a year where I was just like, I can't do anything scary. Everything scared me after that. Yeah. For this brief period of time. And I didn't know what the movie was. I knew it was a vampire movie, and it was just playing on TV. And it took me years to track it down and figure out what it was. And in doing so, I can tell you like the date that it was on TV, because that's the sort of crazy person stuff that I do, where I'm like, let's dig down and find, when this aired. So on TBS, the television channel TBS, there used to be a series that they would do on the weekends called Dinner and a Movie. And what it was is in a similar way that like horror hosts, so like The Last Joe Bob Briggs or Elvira or Svengoolie, things like that. It was kind of like that, but it wasn't always horror related. It was called Dinner and a Movie because they would play a movie, and then there would be these two hosts who were Paul Gilmartin and Annabelle Gurwitch. I don't know who they are.
They didn't speak either.
Yeah.
They'd play the movie, and then those two people would sit and eat dinner, filmed, and then that would be the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was horrifying. That was the part. It was the dinner eating that scared me.
Because they were clearly in conflict, so they didn't have a discussion while eating. They just sat and kind of like, every so often one of them would clear their throat, the other one would dart their eyes up like all pissed. Like that was the whole movie.
Like, no. But they would like in the commercial breaks or going and coming from commercial breaks, they would be cooking a dinner that was somewhat themed to the movie that they were doing.
That's cool.
So the episode in question, they were making steak through the heart tartare, and it was for the movie The Lost Boys.
Are you serious?
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah. October 27th of 1995 is when that aired on television.
That is so fucking crazy. First of all, October 1995, I'm 1 year old.
95.
I'm a year old. I was born in 94, so I'm a year old. But the other thing that's fucking crazy.
You watched it, obviously.
Yeah, I love that fucking shit. I was like, fuck, I was gambling at the time. One of the craziest things, though, to me is that right now, you have seen participles, you have seen like 50 billion horror movies, just a guess.
Yeah.
I've seen a few hundred at this point.
According to Letterboxd and what they have, as a genre under that horror film.
Can I guess a couple thousand?
No. It's not that high. It's over 600.
Okay, so, that's still.
Yeah.
When you consider how long your average film is, 600 becomes a year, years.
Yeah.
But right now, one of the only movies that fits this trope that I have seen all the way through that you have not.
I still have not seen it.
Is The Lost Boys.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
That is the thing. To this day, I still have not seen The Lost Boys. Not because I don't want to. Not because I am still afraid of it and I can't tackle this demon that's been in my head for all these years. I just haven't seen it.
It'd just be so much funnier if the reason you hadn't seen it is because you're like, if I watch it, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown.
It's going to unlock something in me and I don't want it to.
I will seal myself in a room and then I will die in it.
That's going to be the thing. But yeah, so I put down horror for a long time, and I say it's a long time, probably in the grand scheme of things. It was like a couple weeks, and then I was right back on that train.
Sure.
Because then, like, all through my, like, preteen and teenage years, it was my friend Nathan, who hopefully we will hear on this podcast maybe in the future, because he's a big horror fan. And so he is one of the, like, founding things of, like, his parents, I guess, were a little more lax than mine about like what he was allowed to rent.
Sure.
And so he could get his hands on like the Friday the 13th movies and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies and some of the Nightmare movies or the Evil Dead trilogy. Like he showed me Evil Dead and like that was life-changing. And so it's like kind of sneaking around and getting to see some of those things that I wasn't necessarily supposed to see or allowed to see from my parents. I have Nathan to thank for it. So like he's a big name for me and where I am today of why I like horror the way that I do. But yeah, it was, with that in mind, it's like, yeah, my parents, they weren't opposed to me watching certain things, but my mom's biggest thing was like, as long as, if it's rated R, it's got blood and guts and whatever, if you can handle it, whatever, but as long as there's no nudity, that was always the thing.
Yeah, a living person's nude body is obviously more offensive than somebody having their guts ripped out of their body.
Well, it definitely is. It still is today.
Guts are yummy. It's offensive to eat somebody who's alive. But when you I come from a deeper part of the South than you do. So, my family, we would gather around and do dinner in a movie, but our dinner was usually a person.
Wow. That is deep, deep South.
Yeah, we're cannibals. Oh, yeah. This is a good time to mention. We have a producer, by the way. Our producer's named Ty. Ty does not have a microphone. He is he's a handsome lad, and he's very good. He got us set up out of the box, ready to record this in about an hour. It was incredible.
We found him on the street.
Yeah, we out on the street for a living. He's fantastic, and we are happy to have him here. So, Ty, I'm going to give you just let's count it at 5 seconds. Hit all of the soundboard things you want.
Man.
Okay, 5 seconds.
This one just has to play out. The applause just goes and goes and goes.
It's the only thing that makes him feel alive. Yeah, is fake canned soundboard applause.
Do you think those people are alive or dead?
The people clapping?
Yes.
Statistically, one of them is dead.
That's true.
They'll never clap again.
All that to say, that's kind of where it all starts for me. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you had did you guys rent movies and stuff growing up and because I had a fascination. That was the other place that I could go is the movie store.
Yeah.
And I would just gravitate to that horror section.
So with your story having you're kind of in your teenagers now.
Yeah.
I will catch up super fast with my story. My parents didn't do any of that. I wouldn't say that it was because we were sheltered. I just don't think it ever crossed their mind of maybe they'd enjoy this or maybe the kids want to see whatever. It just never happened. The scariest movie that we owned that was in my house was Ernest Scared Stupid.
Okay.
And because I was so away from it all, again, we had a bunch of the Berenstain Bears books. The ones that the one that you were talking about, I've never seen that before. It just wasn't in my house. And we didn't do Halloween. It wasn't we dressed up as zombies or what the fuck. My first Halloween costume, I was dopey. The dwarf from Snow White. My mom made me the little green hat, which apparently, so the story goes, I wouldn't wear. And I hated it. So then she was like, fuck it. And she took it off. And then she was like, he's a monk. He's like Friar Tuck. Because I wouldn't wear the fucking hat. Which, sorry, Mom. And also sorry for swearing a lot if you listen to this. But it just was not a thing that we had. I remember being, kind of a coward. I have been for a long time when it comes to media, when it comes to horror. And that's really our dichotomous difference here is that you have loved this stuff for as long as you can remember. And up until 2 years ago, I have fucking hated all of this.
Yeah.
Hate is a strong word. I have avoided it out of personal fear, personal anxieties, because I just didn't have any of it when we were a kid. And all of that can be traced back to, and yes, I do trace stuff back to their origin.
Nice.
And it is the best kind of self-therapy you can give because it does give you some hindsight until you realize that all of your phobia about horror as a medium can be traced back to the LucasArts SNES video game, Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
I've never played that.
My older brother loved that fucking game. I love that game now, but at the time, he would go, it's a 2-player game. It's adult enough that I'm not playing a game.
All those LucasArts games in that era, the point and click and the Monkey Island and things like that, it was all kind of a wink and a nod of we're towing the line of adult humor here.
And this one had you went to a shopping mall that was overrun by zombies and whatever, but there was also Chucky dolls, and they weren't called that, okay. but it was clearly not a Chucky. That's about the time that this game comes out. And he loved it because it wasn't you're playing as Mickey Mouse or you're playing as Mario or you're playing as whomever. It's you are playing as these cool kids wearing 3D glasses, running around, and you squirt water guns, and that's what killed the zombies. Which apparently does not hold up with the zombie lore of the modern world. But I believe firmly that lichen signs All it would need to destroy zombie apocalypse is a couple of squirt guns. But it fucked me up so bad. That game messed me up so bad that to this day, at 30 years old, if I hear the soundtrack to that game, it
sends you right back.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
It like worries me. It's an anxiety that I have, which is why on this fucking show, every time we talk about zombies in any capacity, your hosts will be Derek and somebody else because I can't do zombie stuff. I've done an awful lot, but I can't do zombie stuff.
Yeah. The few that I've kind of like tricked you into watching, I'm just like, well, it's not really a zombie movie. And then we watch, Planet Terror, and it's just like, don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to how goofy it all is and how over the top it is.
Yeah, well, like the shitty, like Demone or Demons, that very old Italian movie that is very bad. We watched,
no, it's great.
And it was like, I'm getting a little weird.
Yeah,
like it's a little.
No, but they're demons.
Yeah,
they're not zombies.
Yeah, but so. You can trace my horror history with, I played that game as a kid. And then I watched Ernest Scared Stupid a handful of times. And I didn't like the Large Marge scene in Pee-wee because it was spooky.
Oh, man, that's a good pull for like early horror stuff.
And then you've got Scooby-Doo, Zombie Island, which fucked me up so bad. Like, I cannot handle it. And it's a fun movie. It's great. And like I said, looking back on it now, it's great. But at the time, it was, oh no, those are real monsters. And that was enough that I couldn't handle that movie. And that one, because it's real monsters, it's adult enough that my older brother wants to watch it and I can't handle it. And then yada, 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 2 years ago, it was my girlfriend's birthday. And she's like, more than anything else, all I want for my birthday is to go to Halloween Horror Nights. That's all I want.
She's you mean, the event that I've tried to get you to go to for the 12 years we've...
And this is another crossover, is that now where you are in your story, you start doing that every year.
Oh, yeah, that is true. Because at 15, I went to Hallow Scream at Busch, and then at 16, I started going to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal, and I've been ever since.
Right. Then you've got me, who you asked me time and time and time again, please come with me. It's so much fun. You're going to love it. It's going to be great. And I would say no every time because I have this tenuous relationship with this stuff. I don't like it. It gives me this,
it's a thing that you don't like, so why would you want to purposely go somewhere where their job is to scare you?
Right. Well, and that's the thing is that you're going, it's not as bad as you think. It's Universal. Shrek is on the fucking billboard. It's not as bad as you think. But, and as honest as you were being, the problem is that their marketing department, their $1 billion marketing department is putting out things like, this year at Halloween Horror Nights, experience fear like you've never experienced before and you'll never experience again. And I'm like, well,
that's good.
Yeah, thank you. I'm like, that sounds way more convincing than it's not that bad. You're going to be fine. So I just avoided it. Well, then she asked me, do you want to go? It's my birthday. I'd like to. And I look at the list of the houses that they have. It was the 30th anniversary. So they've got Beetlejuice. And it's like, I've seen Beetlejuice. It's not that bad. I love that movie. That's fine. So we go. And we did not buy a special pass. We bought a day ticket. Well, I did for her birthday.
Yeah.
And then which is like, at the time, I think it was like $70 for a day. We then went 3 more times together because something snapped. Yep. And I was just like, oh, I fucking love this.
It is like a life-changing experience the first time you go to one of these events.
Yeah, it was just like all the noise and all the people having so much fun. And
that could go either way. It could be a life-changing experience of you go and it clicks and you love it, or you could go and it is the worst experience of your life and you'll never go back.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny. It's funny too because the real draw to the event side of horror, which I'm sure we'll discuss at some point because that's a big part of both of our lives. But the event side is just it's the draw for me at the time, or how I would justify it is, well, no, look at all this meticulous detail. Look at all the effort that went into it. Look at all this. But then it's like the first year they also had Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Haunting of Hill House, which are arguably some of the best horror things that exist. And I didn't get the references to either one of them. So I was like, fuck that. I want to go back through Puppet Theater or, The Pumpkin Growth, which are great. But the point is that they weren't based on anything I needed previous reference to.
That's a good point, yeah.
So then you continue to do horror nights. You continue to watch horror. And at that point, that starts to click with me as well. So we reconnect in this way where we're messaging about something. I don't remember what, but we hadn't really hung out in person for a long time because of shit that is, beyond our control. So that has wound down enough that we're messaging about something and you're like, hey, tomorrow, which was a Saturday, I'm going to go see Scream 6. Do you want to go? Like, well, yeah, sure. fuck it. I'm trying to be into this stuff.
Because I go to the movies a lot. Like movies is like my thing.
Sure.
And so I'm at the movie theater all the time. And so I just kind of throw it out sometimes to people who are just like, hey, I'm going. If you want to join, you're more than welcome. And that was one that I like threw at you and was like, he's never going to say yes.
Well, and you know what? I forget this detail a lot, but another thing about that is you had asked me, and I had just gotten back home. I think I'd been home for like 1 full week, and I had just been in the hospital having back surgery.
Right.
So I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. And then you're like, do you want to get out of your fucking house and do this thing? So like you helped me get into the car, and we went and saw Scream. But before that, you were like, well, this movie. Oh, and by the way, housekeeping for the show. If you were listening to the show, thank you and welcome. But also, every single episode from here on out, whatever the movie is in the title, we're going to spoil it from the jump the whole time. This serves as your spoiler, which is also punishment, by the way. Because if you didn't listen to the show from the beginning and you come in later, well, the warning was before.
Fake fan.
Yeah, fake fan, fake news, real spoilers.
That's good. That's our tagline.
Yeah, no. God, I don't want fake news in my fucking tagline. The point is that we are going to spoil these movies, and here's a great example. We go and we see Scream 6 in theaters, but you say before we go, hey, you probably need to see Scream 5.
Absolutely.
Because it is a direct continuation. And the story reason is Scream 6 is a continuation of like the Jack Quaid, Richie, Ghostface stuff. It's in the next one, the Ghostface killers are all his family members, his father, sister, and brother. And so you needed to know that. Had I not known that, that would have sucked.
Yeah, it would have been you walking through Texas Chainsaw Massacre at HHN. It would have meant nothing.
Right. And so we do that. And then we finish seeing Scream 6. We finish Scream 5. We finish Scream 6 at the theater. And it's like, well, fuck it. Do you want to watch Scream 1?
Yeah.
And that was a good decision because what that then did was it started a new thing for horror with you and I, which is for you a lot of rewatching and for me watching. And that's kind of the thesis of this show is that for you it's a lot of rewatch. For me it's first time watching. But we then sat down and within a 24-hour period, I had seen all of the Scream movies. I'd seen all 6 of them within a day. I think I finished watching 4 at like between 3 and 4 in the morning. I was so captivated by it.
Yeah.
Roger Jackson's voice and Wes Craven's direction and, you know, the way I know that story eventually leads because I had seen the latest 2 and just seeing it was so good. And even though I'd seen like the original Halloween movie a long time before that, but like, you know, I hadn't seen anything else.
A lot of the other stuff that they reference directly in those movies.
Lost on me.
Right.
I get Loomis. The name Loomis, I understand that.
Right.
But like any of the references, and then the janitor who's wearing Freddy's sweater. It's like, well, I've seen Freddy before.
Yeah.
Because I have an expectation about this shit because
it's just part of pop culture at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what is it? Will Smith has that rap song on My Street or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And it references, it references everything.
Nightmare on My Street. It's from, it's part 4 or part 5, I believe.
Yeah. And so you grow up in a world where, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, everything is media. And if everything is media and a third of the media is horror because it's an easy moneymaker, it's schlocky, it's crap, but it's a horror, it's a movie maker or a moneymaker, you can't help but be exposed to it. So I have expectations of this stuff that have either really held up or not held up at all. A good example is, the very first franchise we're going to talk about in this that we're going to break down is Scream.
Right.
Because it's the first one we watched together and it's the first one that I saw. It's a no-brainer. And
I think it's a good entry point for a lot of people in a weird way because even though it's kind of spoilery for things from the past, it's still like it's just a great example of the slasher genre while taking down the slasher genre.
Yeah. And it is a well-meaning parody.
Yeah.
But it's not so comedic that it isn't also a good slasher movie.
Yeah.
It holds up now. We watched it very recently. It holds up now. And, the premise of the show is you had seen this before. You had liked this series for a very long time. I had never seen it before, but you still know about it. So I knew Scary Movie, and I thought that was the same thing. I thought that Scream was a comedy movie.
Yeah.
And then Ghostface's mask, well, I thought Scream was parodying and did not know where Ghostface's mask came from. But I was like, well, that's not funny because it's kind of creepy. It's like sad and weird. And so, I knew of these things. So then putting all of these pieces together to watch the whole franchise, you have opinions on it because you've experienced it long before and held on to those opinions. and then see it, and they only compound over time. But this is, it's my first impression for all of this. Series that I'm sure we'll go over: Scream, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. I mean, all the way to fucking like Leprechaun. And we watched the Cube movies. Yeah. And like, you know, and so I think the general thesis of our show and what we are looking to discuss is, coming from two separate places, what do these things mean to people? Mm-hmm. And I represent...
What holds up, what doesn't hold up. What were your expectations going into these things, having no real knowledge other than just what pop culture has, you know, you've seen what this character looks like.
Yeah, I've seen a Sam shirt from Trick or Treat at a Hot Topic, but I didn't know what the fuck that was.
Yeah, because that is, well, we'll save that, but that is a key example of like, we got done with it and the credits are rolling and you're like, that isn't what I expected that movie to be at all.
Well, that's funny because, I mean, if you go through, a part of this journey is what I'll refer to it as, of getting, watching all of this stuff with you and this becoming a hobby and like a habitual routine, is that I downloaded Letterboxd because I wanted to keep track of everything.
Right.
I don't have anything interesting to say. I'm dumb as a fucking post, but I wanted to keep a mental...
Which is why we put you in front of a microphone.
Yeah. You put me in front of a microphone, you give me as much ketamine as my veins can handle without bursting, and you just let me rip. I'm actually not on ketamine. I feel like I need to say that.
Yeah, let's preface
it's fentanyl. I'm on fentanyl.
But not enough to kill you.
No. Only enough that my back doesn't hurt. So I, as part of getting with this in Letterboxd, what I realized is that Letterboxd is not how I'm keeping track of these. It is how many times I have been like, what the fuck is happening? What is this? Why is, I'll give you a great example. I think it's Friday the 13th 4. And Jason has chased the boyfriend into the basement and is hacking him to pieces. And the performer who plays the boyfriend is literally going, oh my God, he's killing me. Run, he's killing me. And just says it over and over and over again. And my mouth is to the floor open. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Because you expect these to be like The Shining. Mm-hmm. You expect them to be works of art. They are so famous. They are so popular. Everyone is afraid of them. They are thus things that you have like Halloween time at Hollywood fucking Video in 1998. That's the poster out front. And it's like, because that's who is scary. And then you watch, in a month, you go from watching Evil Dead Rise, which is, again, we'll save it. And it's also tremendous. But it's, to this day, that's one of the scariest fucking movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, pretty brutal.
I have seen so much at this point that I am unfazed. I am the grizzled 50-year cop. It takes a lot to flap me with these movies.
But we got you there in like 2 years' time.
Yeah, it's like the bleeding effect from Assassin's Creed. We just shoved as much horrible shit into my eyes as possible, and now I can see a car wreck and just be like, I'm thinking Arby's. Anybody else? But
always.
Never. It's the worst possible outcome is to watch one of these entire franchises, and I then don't want to buy an action figure from it because I collect action figures like I'm a pack rat. Yeah, and that's the mark that they're done and that I like them. Right. We watch, and it can be a series with 30 movies in it. It can be a series with 2.
Yeah, I mean, look at what. My Bloody Valentine. There's just
have
like
the
original and the remake, and I'm pretty sure that's it.
Is it Jensen Ackles or Ackles?
Oh, that I don't know.
Yeah, and we'll go over that and more when we discuss Scream next week.
Absolutely not.
But yeah, that's as you know. I pitched this to you. We watched Friday the 13th, and it was your idea, and I recommend doing this at home. We watched Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street movies in tandem. So 1, then 1, then 2, then 2.
To an extent. I have a specific order that we watch in.
Well, it's also because there aren't as many as the other.
Correct.
But we end with Freddy versus... Actually, no, we fucking didn't.
Well, yeah, because you're watching them in chronological order for what's happening in the movies, not for when they were released. So we get to Freddy versus Jason, which came out in 2003, but then you're going to follow that up with Jason X, because that takes place in the future.
If you're wondering what kind of...
But it came out 2 years prior.
Yeah, if you're wondering what kind of observations that you can only get from the Third Channel podcast, I'll give you a good example. Did you know that both Actually, no, 3. Did you know that fucking Pinhead, Jason Voorhees, and the Leprechaun all go to space, and the Leprechaun and the Cenobites go in their 4th movie?
That is true.
See, these are the kind of groundbreaking horror exposés that you can expect here at the Third Channel.
Yeah, nobody's ever touched on these things before.
No, and nobody ever will again. Once we've said it, there's no point in saying it anymore.
That's true.
Because we are scholars. And that's why we decided to do this, so we could share. No, I would say I think the biggest reason that we wanted to do this is because we at least from my perspective, we watched all this stuff, and it's like, as fun as this is, and as fun as it is having this library of experience of all this stuff, I still want I want it to be used for something.
Yeah.
And if that something is getting, to discuss this stuff with a voice for it within the community and just kind of be a thing that talks about and brings people into the discussion of horror, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Because what's been the point then for my entire life if from birth I was watching horror movies and then I've never done anything with it.
Yeah. Liz, I think that's the big takeaway, is that if you haven't discussed what you do on microphone, it's not important.
Yeah, you've basically just wasted your life.
Yeah. If you are a doctor, I can't recommend enough, get a cheap snowball microphone and plug it in and talk about it, because then it means something.
Yeah, that's true.
What happened until then?
Did you even, if a doctor performs a surgery in the forest and no one's around to hear him,
was there ever a microphone?
Yeah.
I'm very excited to do this, namely because once we are done, once the show is done, I will have seen every horror movie, because we pulled from weird places to do. We watched, we watched the Cube movies.
There's a couple that I throw out at you and I'm like, oh man, let's go ahead and get him. Let's watch Mandy.
Let's watch Frozen. Not Disney's Frozen,
but Adam Green's
Frozen.
Yeah, which is great.
It's ironic too, because one of the characters is Iceman from the X-Men, is that actor.
That is true.
And if you haven't seen that movie, if you've seen Frozen, that's a really good joke. And if you haven't seen Frozen, we'll get there, and then
eventually,
you can watch it.
Yeah.
Or if you don't want to watch it, we'll tell you what happens.
Yeah. But no, I do. I think eventually we're going to, we'll watch them all.
Yeah.
And we'll hopefully talk about them all.
If you have a favorite horror movie, we will get there. It may take a while, but we will get there.
That actually kind of, if you hadn't already given it away, that is the best tease that we could give for our first official episode, covering a franchise, is what's your favorite scary movie?
Yeah.
And I have an opinion, and I think it's going to be a controversial one.
Okay.
I think it's Scary Movie 3.
That's your favorite scary movie?
Yeah. Of the Scary Movie franchise, I think 3 is probably my favorite, because they cover The Ring and they cover...
you understand that in no capacity was the dialogue, what's your favorite scary movie, referencing the parody Scary Movie, right?
No, I think it was. They even used the same ghost. You were saying this before, the ghost face mask.
No, I was wrong. Oh God, do you not know anything about this?
But it's they're covering The Ring and they're covering Signs, which are 2 of my favorite movies. So doing them both together, just saves rope or whatever.
Yeah. Did you ever see Saw?
Yeah, I've seen Saw.
That's a joke from The Office.
Oh.
It's a good one, too. He says, you ever see Saw? And then Ryan asks, and Dwight says, yeah, I see Saw with Moe's all the time, which is a great joke. And that's the kind of joke that you can expect us to steal and recycle on the Third Channel podcast.
Thanks for tuning in.
Ty, you want to hit some buttons again really quick before we go? There it is.